Jumping back into the action quickly here for the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, we are going to talk about the Raiders a little bit more. We brought them up yesterday in regards to, their future and how they're involved with one of the top quarterbacks in the draft, Shedeur Sanders. Funny enough, the Heisman ceremony is happening tonight, I want to say, and yesterday or the night before that, Shedeur won a couple of trophies as well. So it doesn't directly have to do with him, but with the Raiders and how we brought them up, I thought it made the connection because now, obviously at the league meetings, everybody's present, or most of the owners are anyway, and the meeting was back on Wednesday, and I thought it was interesting that the Raiders and their owner, Mark Davis, spoke with the media about the short-term and the long-term future of the Raiders, right? Because in particular, the owner, Mark Davis, spoke about the new minority owner, Tom Brady, and his involvement going forward. And it might seem a little bit random, but what Mark Davis said regarding Tom Brady with the media on the league meeting was that he said, "I want Tom to have a huge voice, no question about it. It's part of building the infrastructure of the organization, a football person that's not a coach or a manager, somebody that can oversee the whole picture, and I believe Tom, in time, will be the person that can do that." And also, Mark Davis was reported saying that he wants to see Tom kind of oversee the organization's entire front office, including the general manager and the head coach. I'm not saying, directly hiring these guys and just having Tom Brady pick whoever he likes, but just giving, his input, what he sees, what kind of impression he gets from these guys, because obviously he's been around an A-plus top-tier elite organization and how things are run in a well-oiled machine, essentially. So he has a lot to give out, a lot of help to give out to the Raiders, and that's something that I believe Tom wants to do, but the fact that Mark Davis said it as well, I think, is a good idea, quite honestly. And further reports from the Journal's sources say that there could be a lot of changes that could happen at every level of the organization once Tom Brady and Mark Davis work together more, once they get past, this initial phase of still, kind of getting integrated with everything, and being involved in this project that is the Raiders, right? Once they get more acclimated with one another, a bunch of sources say that there could be a lot more changes coming. And by that, it doesn't necessarily have to be, like in a year or two. It could be just this off season, right? Where, we could be talking about decisions being made on the head coach and the general manager with their current general manager, Tom Telesco, and head coach, Antonio Pierce. And on those changes, Mark Davis really wouldn't, really wouldn't commit to Antonio Pierce as the head coach, going forward. There's about 4 games left, but they have a 4-11 record. And, it goes without saying that the Raiders haven't been good this year. Antonio Pierce had a pretty good end of the year last year, and he turned the culture around a little bit. He turned the morale around in that Raiders locker room, right? So that was a great thing to see, a great story. It gave you confidence in him that he really cared, and he really cared about seeing the Raiders succeed, so he got the job, and I think that's well-deserved. But now, after all of that and, still having the confidence, I'm sure, of the organization, but you still have a 4-11 record, doesn't look great, obviously. So there are some questions there. It's not like he completely, just disregarded him as a head coach going forward, but he also didn't, praise him as either. So it's kind of still at a gray area, I would say, for Antonio Pierce. But they also said that, Mark Davis and the Raiders would reevaluate everything after the season, and I'm sure that's going to include Tom Brady as well, and on Antonio Pierce. And I imagine with general manager Tom Telesco that they're going to also reevaluate him and see the kind of job that he's done, bringing in guys like Brock Bowers, and their second round pick, I want to say, Jackson Powers-Johnson, has been pretty solid for them on the offensive line, but then everything else is still a bit of a struggle. So those two guys, Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco, have been really at the forefront of trying to build this team, along with, I'm sure, Mark Davis helping out, but it obviously hasn't, been what they had hoped. So those guys' positions are definitely, again, closer to a gray area than definitely just being reassured. And I do feel like, though, Tom Telesco is in a more positive feeling, just based on things that I've read, it feels like he's in a more secure spot than Antonio Pierce than I would say, but you never know. But my standpoint on Antonio Pierce and just his future and things like that, I don't think the roster's kind of done him any favors, quite honestly, and it's not to disregard any sort of blame or responsibility that Antonio Pierce shoulders as a head coach, that comes with it, but also, I think not having a quarterback is obviously a huge problem. The team was going to be all right. The team was going to be decent or all right with an exciting young quarterback, potentially, if they drafted one in the first round. So the fact that they missed out by one pick on one of the top 5 to 6 quarterbacks that were selected in the first round, it's pretty unlucky. And everybody knew it on the day of the draft, like, oh my God, can you imagine, the Raiders, they wanted to get a quarterback and now they can't. They're the only team that needed one that didn't end up with one. But they got Brock Bowers at the end of the day, and he is probably going to make the Pro Bowl this year. So, did they really lose, getting a guy like Brock, but also not getting their quarterback? It's a weird spot to be because they definitely didn't think Brock was going to be this good. I mean, I think he's still leading the league in receptions. It's crazy what he's doing, and he looks like he's played for 4 years now, and it's awesome to see for the Raiders. So at least they hit a home run with that pick. But I think that this year they're definitely going to need a quarterback, and that's why I was so adamant on Shedeur or even Cam Ward, right? He's still a great pick, but I think Shedeur just fits in Las Vegas a little bit more, and I think this year coming up should be where you decide on a final decision with Antonio Pierce, right? I think he's earned one more year based on, I mean, it's hard to say based on the results or anything like that, but I think just the fact that it's still kind of like an unturned stone. It's kind of hard to put it into words because, you look at guys or teams like Washington and New England and how they found this whole new potential with a new, young, exciting quarterback, right? If the Commanders were where the Raiders were and, those two spots were flipped, the Raiders would be, I think, in a whole different spot where Antonio Pierce, if they had Jaden Daniels on their team and he was playing great, it would definitely earn him another opportunity. And I think he's bought himself just one extra year to kind of bring in a new quarterback, try to develop him, and see what this team can truly be when they have a leader, when they have a guy that they can rely upon, not just one of these guys that, no offense to Minshew and no offense to Aiden O'Connell, that aren't really the futures of this franchise. You can't put so much on Antonio Pierce to kind of have this team competing for the playoffs with backups and a roster that's quite honestly not there yet. So it was always going to be a long-term project, and I don't think it would be fair to just move on from Antonio Pierce after this year yet. So I think he's bought himself one more year, bring in a new offensive coordinator that gels with whatever new young coordinator or new young quarterback, that they bring in, and Tom Brady's going to be involved in all of that. I'm sure Mark Davis values his input and his comments, very highly. So I think, and I hope Tom Brady kind of sees it the same way. And also for some people that might think it's weird or just unacceptable, inappropriate that Tom Brady's helping this organization kind of, get back on their feet and helping them out in this way, I think it would be dumb for the Raiders and for Tom to kind of not help each other, or for Tom not to help the Raiders. I think it would be dumb for them to not seek out his help. So I think that's a ridiculous thing to say for anybody that says this might be inappropriate or that he shouldn't be doing that as a minority owner, and with the broadcasting at Fox, he shouldn't try and improve this team or give any input. I think that's all just nonsense. I'm sure this was part of why he got involved, and I appreciate also Mark Davis, being open to doing that. Not a lot of owners would, when they get like a minority owner, like I think Magic Johnson is a minority owner with the Commanders, right? And I don't know if Josh Harris allows like any sort of input, but a lot of old school owners and just these suits, as players call them, right? A lot of them don't allow for input, or they'll just kind of disregard what their minority owners say and things like this. So credit to Mark Davis for being open to it. He's no dummy. He knows he's talking to the greatest quarterback of all time. So he'd be foolish not to take that input if he really wants to make this team good. So I'm hoping that that sort of partnership ends up doing good things for the Raiders, because I think they're getting there. They're getting close, and I think Antonio Pierce is a good leader of men, and you don't find a lot of that in a lot of these new head coaches. A lot of them wow you with the scheme and everything in their results, but talking about true leaders like him, like Dan Campbell, like Mike Tomlin, those kind of guys, you don't find a lot of that. So I think that also still holds some value with the Raiders, and I would like to see Antonio Pierce continue as well. So we'll see where the Raiders go from here, but we do have one more topic to get to on a much larger scale. The NFL made an official announcement that they're going to go back to Germany in 2025, but in a new city. Find out what that new city is and where this international plan is heading with the NFL once we come back right after this.